Hi and welcome along to this webinar on great leadership and project management. My name is Sean Whitaker and I'll be taking you through this today. I'm glad that you've been able to find some time to join us for this webinar. This particular topic is one that's very close to my heart and one that I believe is incredibly important for the profession of project management and individual project success. Let's take a look at what we'll be getting through in this particular webinar. We haven't got a lot of time, it's about 40 or 50 minutes long, so it's really an overview and an introduction to leadership, and particularly leadership within project management, and particularly authentic leadership, which is based on a competency-based model for leadership, which I'm going to show you. We're going to look at some of the key competencies for leadership within the profession of project management based on some research we've done recently. And then we're going to use the work of Kurzes and Posner to present the 5 practices of exemplary leaders. And throughout, we're going to discuss the implications for project managers and the entire profession of project management. So hopefully it's a topic that resonates with you. Often we're told that in order to be successful project managers, we must look at those hard skills of Gantt charts and earned value management and risk analysis. But the research really tells us that it's the soft skills that are more important, and amongst those soft skills, leadership is perhaps the most important. It's always good to question why bother though with studying leadership of any form. So whether it's to do with your own professional development within project management or elsewhere in your career, studying leadership, practicing the application of leadership, and through these things developing your own leadership abilities is critically important for you, both personally and professionally. The things that you'll learn in order to be a great leader will help you in both spheres of your life, personal and professional. Personally, studying and applying leadership skills will enable a path for growth to help you reach your full potential. So I encourage you, whether it's for personal reasons or professional reasons, to take a proactive approach to accepting the personal and professional challenges that leadership opportunities present. Let's take a look at specifically leadership and the profession of project management. I like to join the dots and answer the question, well, why should we focus on leadership and project management? So this is from research, and if you want the references for the research, just let me know and I'll email them through to you. So we know that from extensive research and repeated research that properly applied professional project management practices actually do add bottom line or financial value to an organization. So if you do projects well, organizations perform better. Okay, so that's the link between project management and organizational success. Here's the next link, and this is based on research as well, repeated research, which regularly shows that good leadership increases the likelihood of project success, and the absence of leadership negatively affects projects. So if we join those dots together, we can see that good leadership increases the likelihood of project success. Successful projects mean successful organizations. So there's the links between leadership, projects, and organizational success. Some of you may be new to the concept of leadership or a bit confused about what exactly it is. It does seem to be one of those terms where everybody thinks they know what it means, but if you ask people, well, what is it? What definition do you have of leadership or leaders? People tend to become a little more stumped then, and it sort of reveals itself as this hard to define characteristic, or if not hard to define, it suffers from multiple, often contradictory definitions, which sometimes leave us more confused. So here we've got a definition that I just grabbed quickly off the internet using the phrase define leadership. And that tells us that it's the action of leading a group of people or an organization, or the ability to do this. Some synonyms there: guidance, direction, authority, control, management, superintendence, supervision. But it doesn't really define leadership for us in ways that we can easily understand, and if somebody else asked us, we could tell them. So given this difficulty in defining exactly what leadership is, After doing some research, I came up with the following definition of leadership, which I think sums up all the relevant aspects of leadership. My definition of leadership is the purposeful influencing of followers. Now, there's a picture of a tripod here for a particular reason, and that's because the purposeful influencing of followers has three key elements, and like a tripod and its three legs, if it doesn't have all of those three key elements, it just doesn't work. So leadership must be purposeful, it must also be influencing, and it must also have followers. Let's take a closer look at each of those. Leadership must be purposeful. This means that somebody who decides to be a leader must accept willingly the challenges that leadership presents and demands of them. It must be purposeful because there are many people we may wish to follow who may not wish to lead us. So the leader has to accept they're going to lead and the challenges that come with that. So that's the first of the three elements of leadership. It must be purposeful. The second of the three key elements of the definition of leadership is influencing. The leader's got to lead somewhere, and in order to go that way, the leader has to bring the followers with them. And in order to do that, they must influence the followers. And the best way to do that is to have a strong vision and communicate it to the followers. So a leader has to have influencing or political and communication skills. All of these things will help the leader influence followers to move towards the direction or the vision that they have. The third of those three elements of the definition of leadership is followers. Now, keep in mind that leadership is a relationship between those who choose to lead and those who choose to be led. I think sometimes we fall for that myth that leadership exists in isolation and that it would exist with or without followers. It's just there are leaders and that's it. But that's simply not true. Leadership is definitely a relationship. Without followers, there are no leaders. When followers withdraw their consent to be led, the leader has no followers. And when you think about the numbers of followers that there are to a given leader, you have to start to question, where is the power in this relationship? I think too many times we're told that the power is with the leader, when that's clearly not true. I think some leaders would like us to keep believing that in order to preserve their position. But the truth is, the power is with the followers. They consent to be led. Usually, they're not very explicit about the conditions under which they'll allow themselves to be led and the conditions under which they'll withdraw that consent. But keep in mind that at any point, followers can withdraw their consent to be led. At best, the leader finds themselves with no team behind them. At worst, they may find themselves kicked out of the country that they're running. So keep this in mind. A leader must acknowledge, value, and protect this relationship between followers. And also keep in mind that throughout your life, you may be given occasional opportunities to be a leader, whether it's in your professional or personal life, but you're probably going to be a follower all throughout your life in different settings. So that brings me to the next question. And this next question is, where is the focus on leadership and followership? It's interesting because before starting this webinar, I jumped online quickly and I had a look. Now on Amazon, if you go onto Amazon and you type in the phrase leadership, up comes over 250,000 results for leadership on Amazon. But if you type in followership, you get a little over 200 results. That's a terrible ratio between followership and leadership. We seem to have developed and endorsed this industry focused on leadership, and that perpetuates this myth that leadership exists in a vacuum without followers when that's clearly not true. Do the same search on Google, and again I did this just before starting this webinar, And right then, on Google, if you use the phrase leadership or the word leadership, there are over 749 million results returned. I didn't scroll through them all. And over only 430,000 for followership. And that's a 0.06%. So again, these results show that our focus tends to be on leadership and not followership. I'll show you some books shortly, and it reflects the growing growth in this area of research. But perhaps it's time we moved away from obsessing over and focusing on leadership skills and started giving equal focus to followership skills. Start focusing on that conscious decision to be a follower, and the skills and attributes you need to be a good follower, and the relationship and how it's explained between the two, leader and follower. I think that's the real area for research for the following years to come. So think about this. Are you a leader or a follower? Are you both? Are you sometimes one or the other? If you are a leader, do you know what your followers expect of you? Have you been brave enough to ask them, to explicitly recognize the relationship between leader and follower? And if you are a follower, or when you are a follower, do you know what your leaders expect of you? And conversely, have you been brave enough to tell them the conditions under which you'll allow yourself to be led, consent to be led, and be led, so they know exactly what you expect of them? Have a think about those concepts of leader and follower. Some of them may be quite new to you. Now, before we go any further, I want to address the question of born or made. I often come across people who insist that leaders are born. If you're not born with certain skills or attributes, you can't become a leader. Well, that's simply not true. Absolutely not true. Yes, there is some research out there that says there are certain physical characteristics which we tend to imbue with leadership qualities. But we must recognize that leadership is situational, and different styles of leadership are necessary in different situations. Now, sometimes those particular physical characteristics that the research tells us we decide make good leaders, whether or not they are good leaders, generally we ascribe those characteristics what we call charismatic leaders. And these are the great speakers and the deep voices and the great hand gestures and all of that. And whether or not they are good leaders, we tend to think they are because of these physical characteristics. But regardless of that, charismatic leadership, for all its benefit, only really works well in transformational situations where change has to happen quickly and followers have to move quickly. But that same type of leadership can be a liability in many other leadership situations and actually cause an adverse outcome. The key thing is here, you have leadership skills and strengths, and you shouldn't discount them because they're not what some people consider the typical skills of leaders. As we'll see soon, there are many, many, many different types of leadership and leadership styles, and they're all equally important in different settings. So the key things here are figure out what sort of leader you are and then put yourself into those situations. If you're a quiet relationship type of leader, don't put yourself into a situation where high transformation has to happen quickly. So moving on from that introduction to what leadership is and defining it, we're going to move on and look at, well, what are the characteristics, traits, and skills a great leader should have, particularly a great leader in the profession of project management. Before we get into this area, at the end of this webinar, your interest may be sparked in studying leadership more intensely or more deeply. Just be aware that if you do go out there and start studying leadership, there is what I call a leadership development spectrum. There are many great books, there are many great courses that exist out there to help you develop your own leadership abilities. But you just need to be aware that they generally focus at some point on the spectrum. At one end of the spectrum, down here on the left, we have the deeply spiritual aspect of leadership development. And these are the sorts of things that usher you on our personal introspective journey, those sorts of things here. And then we have the personal aspects of leadership development, the personal attributes and skills. There's also tasks that a leader should be able to perform and learn what to do. And there's also the technical aspects of being a leader. So when you do go and take a look at a particular book or a particular course or online something or other, try and figure out at what point on the spectrum is it focusing. Obviously, for your particular type of leadership and the context in which you used to or want to practice it, you may need to do the whole of the spectrum. And just to show you some of the books that do exist on the spectrum, here's a photo of some of the books from my library on leadership. So I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar that leadership is a particular passionate topic of mine, and it's something that I've been studying for the last few years, particularly in the profession of project management. But as you can see here, this is one stack of books. There's probably about 3 times as many books on leadership in my library, and they all focus on a couple of different things. You'll notice down the bottom here 2 books on followership. So it's great to see books now being written on followership. And you'll see some of the more well-known books. There's James McGregor Burns' book on leadership. I think that's Daniel Goleman there on emotional intelligence. Robert Greenleaf on becoming a servant leader. That's Bill George, True North, near the top. And we're going to use this one here, Curzon and Posner's The Leadership Challenge, in this webinar as well. And I'll have some of these referenced on the last slides here if you want to follow up with them. My recommendation though is the smallest book right up the top by Brad Jackson, and it's a wonderfully concise little book which outlines everything you need to know about studying leadership, and I'll give you that reference at the end. If you do want other references, please feel free to get in contact with me, and I'm more than happy to pass them on. So keep that in mind. There are lots of ways to study leadership. And in fact, just to prove the point, this slide takes words from book titles about leadership from Amazon, just to show you the different types of leadership that there is out there. So how could you possibly know all about extraordinary, servant, dominant, situational, narcissistic, business, adaptive, character-based, introverted, passionate, executive? Look at all of them. There's so many ways to describe leadership, and these are all titles from books about leadership available currently on Amazon. So you can learn about the warrior leader or the entrepreneurial leader or the tribal leader. There are some curious ones. The secret leader, I haven't actually read that one. It seems to be counterintuitive. The superhero leader, maybe that's Spider-Man and Superman sorting things out finally. But keep in mind, with my emphasis on also studying followership, where are the same book titles on followers? Where is the book on the strategic follower, the natural follower, the innovative follower, the servant follower, the transformational follower, the charismatic follower, the ethical follower? All of these things should also be focused on followers. Again, if we start to do this, we start to lose that myth that we've created around the power of the leader. So if you want to follow up any of those books, just be aware they've all got their own particular lens on leadership. If you do read them, don't think that this is the only way to be a leader. They'll all be good in their own particular ways and in their own particular context. This applies to projects as well. Different projects have different cultures and context and challenges, and the type of leadership will change with that. It will also change throughout the life of a project. So keep those things in mind. Now what we're going to do is to move on to presenting a competency-based model for leadership in projects. Obviously, when we talk about project management and projects, we acknowledge that there are some unique situational aspects about projects. The project environment is finite and unique. It's got those constraints of time, budget, resources, quality, scope, whatever else on it. And also, we also know that it's going to end one day. And this matters in terms of how you lead a team. So, Thanks to Rodney Turner and Ralph Mueller, we have a competency model for project leadership which describes 15 core competencies that may be useful in particular settings. Let's take a look at that model. So this is the model from Turner and Mueller. It's from a wonderful book published in 2006 called Choosing Appropriate Project Managers, Matching Their Leadership Style to the Type of Project. It's an exhaustive piece of research and I do recommend it. From this, they put forward a basket of competencies, and there's 15 of them. Now, they put forward all these different types of projects, whether they're large, small, complex, risky, engineering, all of these things, and then they figured out which ones of these competencies or mix of competencies suited those particular projects. So let's take a look at these 15 competencies of project leadership. We've got over here the managerial competencies, which include engaging communication, managing resources, empowering, developing, and achieving. We've got 3 intellectual competencies: critical analysis and judgment, vision and integration, and strategic perspective. And then we've got some emotional competencies as well: self-awareness, emotional resilience, motivation, sensitivity, influence, intuitiveness, and conscientiousness. So these are a basket of 15 competencies that a project leader should be able to draw out at different times and different mixes the right bundle to suit a particular type of project. So that's great, and I liked this model and I thought, well, that's great, that describes the competencies of project leadership, and all you have to do is to focus on those, get good at the ones that you can get good at, accept some of the others as weaknesses, and do what you can and learn to be a great leader. However, in studying leadership, which began about 10 years ago for me, something struck me. I met somebody who was a great leader, an absolutely great leader, and I got to observe them in the workplace. And in the workplace, they said and did all the right things, which was kind of great, and they were very good to their team. But outside of the workplace, they were a completely different person, and they spoke very poorly of their team. And what was interesting was I asked this person, I said, there seems to be a difference between what you say in the workplace and what you say outside of the workplace. And they said to me at this point, don't worry about it. I've been on all the leadership courses. I know how to be a great leader. Well, I can tell you now, it backfired on them badly, because you can't just learn to be a good leader and pretend to be a good leader. And so what I've added to that model is a need for a strong, authentic, personal foundation. Because like any relationship, if a relationship's not built on authenticity, somebody in the relationship will know, either explicitly or implicitly. They'll know something's not quite right about it. So, if we take that model from Turner and Mueller with those 15 competencies, emotional, managerial, intellectual competencies, and we simply add to it a strong, authentic personal foundation, I think we have a complete model for authentic leadership, particularly authentic leadership within the profession of project management. Now, having a personal foundation is important. Having integrity is important. Now, the definition of integrity means having a set of values and sticking with them. This can be tough at times. If you say that one of your values is honesty, but sometimes you're not showing a lot of integrity. You're not being very authentic. Being authentic means having integrity. It means your words match your actions. Keep in mind that the need for an authentic personal foundation is a constant throughout your career as a leader. At different times, you'll be asked to display other competencies from that 15 competency model depending on the situation. But at all times, you'll need to be authentic and have that strong personal foundation. That is the one constant in all leadership situations. And also keep in mind, without a strong personal foundation, the dark narcissistic side of leadership can take hold. With leadership comes power. And with power comes corruption. And it sounds simple to say it, but if you don't have that sense of integrity and what your values are, and a desire and a commitment to being authentic, sometimes you can cross that line and not come back. So I want you to have a think about leaders that you know. They could be real, they could be imaginary, they could be fictional, non-fictional, historical, whatever. And think about them. Did they have a strong personal foundation, and were they authentic? Here are some pictures coming up of iconic leaders throughout history. Some of them you'll recognize, some of them you may not recognize. But as the pictures come up, I want you to think about it. Are they genuine and authentic leaders? Now, you don't need to agree with their politics, but just ask yourself this question. Did they do what they said they would do? Were they true to their word? Or did they say one thing and do another? There's one of the key tests for being an authentic leader. So take a look at that image, and if you want to, and you're showing this to a group of people, it's okay to stop the webinar or pause it at this point and have a discussion. Now, there are some images there, once you do some research, may change your views on some of these people as to whether they are authentic or not. So I'll leave that up to you to have the discussion, and I do urge you to do some full research, some full biographical information on these people here. I can look at those slides and tell you that there are there are three people. Three of those people I would class as inauthentic leaders. Everybody else I would class as an authentic leader. So if you think you know which three I would class as non-authentic, email me and I'll tell you if you're right. So we've discussed that a strong personal foundation is a constant requirement every time you show leadership. But I wanted to find out, in the field of project management, in the profession of project management, was there a subset of those which are more regularly needed than others? So I went out and did some research. I spoke to some people all around the world, working in different industries, and I think we had of all the respondents, we had a truly global response, which was good. I think about 70% of the respondents worked in the IT industry for project management, and about 30% worked in the construction side of things. But we went out and we asked them the same set of questions in order to determine of those 15 identified competencies from the Turner and Mueller model, are there perhaps some which are better to have more consistently? So let's take a look very quickly at the research that we did and see if we can map some core competencies back. So the first thing we did was we asked, what attracted you to the profession of project management? Now, this was a surprise actually. The most constant answer given was the ability to develop the leadership role quickly. Now, at this point, the people being interviewed did not know they were going to be asked about leadership. So we weren't biasing the answer straight away. Obviously, later in the interview, some of the questions went on to leadership, but at this point, they didn't know that we were asking about leadership. So the fact that they came up with leadership was quite interesting. To be honest, I expected a lot more people to say remuneration, because generally speaking, or relatively speaking, the profession of project management can be a well-paid profession. But it was actually the leadership role, the ability to show leadership and be a leader. Obviously, some of the other things we know about the profession of project management: variety, diversity, and challenge. They liked organizing and planning. They liked seeing work to completion and building something tangible as well there. But the main attraction for most people, in fact, nearly 40% of people, was the ability to demonstrate leadership and practice their leadership skills. We then asked them, what are your core values? Remember that the word integrity means having a set of values and sticking with them. So let's take a look at what the core values of these project managers said. There they are. honesty and integrity. Honesty as a core value of over 60% of respondents, and integrity of a third of them. So keep that in mind when it comes to figuring out what your core values are. Do you have a set of core values? Do you know what they are? Do you know the conditions under which you won't act with integrity and you'll bend those core values? Some of the other values were quite interesting too. Humor came up in third place, which I found quite interesting. But then we had trust, authenticity, self-learning, fairness, etc. going down the scale. Now, for the purposes of the research, we didn't give them a predetermined list. We just simply asked them for their answer and categorized them as per the words they used. But honesty, right there. That's a good value to have. Have you figured out what your values are? The next question we put to them was based about their leadership experience. And we asked the people to think about a time in their life when they've accepted a leadership role, and as a result of them being a leader, things went well. Don't be shy at this point if you're conducting this exercise in your own mind. So you may have been a leader at some point, and as a result of your leadership contribution, things went really well. What behaviors, characteristics, and traits did you display as a great leader when this occurred? Or what do you hope your followers would say about your leadership style? So we asked this question of people, and this is what they said. What did they do when they were being great leaders? Well, they said they thought they were great communicators, they had a great vision, they trusted people and showed empathy towards people. And they were certainly the top 4 things that they hoped their followers would think about their leadership style. Being a great communicator, having a vision, trusting people, and having empathy towards people. Those are the 4 top when they were being a great leader in their mind. The next question we asked them was about their followership experience, and we asked them to think about a person in their life who has inspired them with their leadership role. And you can do this exercise as well. Think about that person. They might be real, they might be fictional, non-fictional, historical, whatever. But as our lives often intersect with these inspiring people, think about that. What was it about this person that you admired? And what lesson did this person teach you about leadership that you would pass on to someone wanting to be a great leader? So this is your experience as a follower. When we ask this question of our respondents, what did they actually admire in great leaders? We find those same 4 elements, albeit in a slightly different order, are at the front of it all. They admired the people who were great communicators, who trusted them, who had a vision and showed empathy and understanding towards them. So that research confirms whether they're a leader or a follower, the 4 same elements. So if we take those 4 elements now and we map them back to the model from Turner and Mueller, and here are the 15 competencies of that model. So let's map back those 4 key components in the profession of project management. Engaging communication is one of the managerial competencies. Empowering, now this is the one that was called trusting in the previous research. Empowering people, trusting them. We know that we perform much better when we're trusted, and I'm sure we all work better then. I'm not sure about you, but I've worked in some instances where you're being micromanaged and you feel like you're not trusted to do your job. But empowering people and trusting them. Having a vision and being able to communicate it and integrate it into the project. And finally, the word we used in our research, or the word that was given to us, was empathy. Here, it's an emotional competency, sensitivity. So from the research, we can see that when it comes to project management, a project leader should be able to focus on and display all 15 competencies at different points. But perhaps it's that ability to be an engaging communicator, to empower and trust people, have a vision and communicate it well, and be empathic or sensitive towards others. Those 4 elements are perhaps the most consistent. So if you're going to focus on your own leadership development, perhaps focus on these 4 first and keep those ones as a constant in your project management career. We then ask people, well, what things do they need to work on to become a great leader? And interestingly enough, they said they need to go work on their people skills. Understanding people, showing empathy, showing trust, understanding people with different viewpoints to their own. They also said they needed to work on their strategic and visionary skills, their general leadership skills, and coaching and mentoring. Now this one here is quite interesting, coaching and mentoring. It's one of my personal favorites. Now you may be thinking you don't need a mentor at this point, and that may be true, but how about becoming a mentor to somebody else? One of the greatest ways to bone up on your own skills is to be a coach or a mentor to somebody else. So don't be afraid to volunteer yourselves to a junior or somebody less experienced than you to give them some occasional coaching and mentoring and leadership. And also for your own professional development, have somebody more senior and more experienced offer you coaching or mentoring is a great way to develop your own leadership skills as well. So now that we've taken a look at a great definition of leadership and the reasons why we should be an authentic leader and some of the maybe core competencies of leadership and project management, we can move on to take a look at some of the ways that you could develop these core competencies. Now here I'm going to use a model from Kurses and Posner, The Leadership Challenge, which is one of the best books out there I've found for doing leadership work. I do encourage you to go buy the book. It's got workbooks. It's got workbooks for each of these 5 practices. There's a whole website devoted to it as well. And amongst all my reading and work, it's one of the simplest to use to put into practice. It's very reflective, and it does in fact help you to be a better project manager and a better leader. Also, their work is built on, I think at this point, over 20 or 25 years of actual science. It's not just opinion or a self-help book, it's actually based on scientific research as well. So from this work, Kurses and Posner put forward the 5 practices of exemplary leaders. Once again, I want to stress this is based on research of exemplary leaders. And these are the 5 practices that they've seen repeated again and again and again in the best leaders. The first one is model the way. The second one, inspire a shared vision. The third one, challenge the process. 4th, enable others to act. And 5, encourage the heart. Interestingly enough, not one of them says build a great Gantt chart or do great earned value management or quantitative risk analysis. So you'll find those things missing from there. So let's go through each of these 5 practices and the actions associated with them. The first one, model the way, breaks down into 2 key actions. First up, find your voice by clarifying your personal values. Figure out what your values are. Write them down if necessary. Spend some time considering which are the ones you'll never break and which are the ones you'll bend sometimes. Then, once you've got your own values, set the example by aligning your words and actions. Do what you say you're going to do. Remember, titles are granted, but it's your behavior that wins you respect. And leaders are supposed to stand up for your beliefs, so you'd better have some beliefs to stand up for. So, take some time as an exercise to find out what your personal values are, write them down, and then live those values. That's the definition of integrity. It can be challenging at times. It's worthwhile acknowledging that. There are times when it's hard to be as honest as we'd like, or as trusting as we'd like, but it pays off in the long run. And if you want to be respected as a great leader, you do need to model the way and live your own values. The next of the 5 practices is to inspire a shared vision. Now, this means you need to look to the future and imagine something exciting and then communicate this to people. Right now, your vision may be this webinar ending in about 10 minutes time. That's great. You may have a vision for your own career or your personal life or fitness goals or education, and you can see the end of it. Well, that's what a vision is. It's you looking into the future and imagining what the possibilities there may exist there. And that's where leaders need to gaze across this horizon of time, imagine what opportunities are there, and then convince their followers to arrive at that distant destination. Now, in the field of project management, your vision could be a successful project, under budget, ahead of time, a happy client, repeat business. Whatever your vision is, communicate it. Because it's no point having a vision if you keep it to yourself. You've got to tell your followers what that vision is so that they understand it and they buy into it and they follow you with it. And if you have enthusiasm and passion for your vision, this will be catching. And in fact, passion is highlighted here in red because it's perhaps the most important part of having a vision. We know that the best leaders are passionate about what they do. And passion here, the definition from the dictionary is a strong or extravagant fondness, enthusiasm, or desire for anything. For example, a passion for music. So become passionate about your vision, your successful project, your happy client, your repeat business, your new product, the efficiencies you're delivering, whatever it is. Display some passion about it. And if you can't get passionate about the project or whatever it is, figure out what it is in life that you're passionate about and bring those elements into your workplace. If you can do this and bring your passion into your workplace, into a vision, your followers will respect you more and they'll be more willing to lead you in pursuit of that vision. Next, challenge the process. As a leader, you have to lead people somewhere new, somewhere they haven't generally gone before, towards a new project deliverable. You're the one who takes responsibility for going in that direction. So you've got to be prepared to seek out innovation. You've got to experiment and take risks. You've got to be prepared to fail. Remember, failure doesn't guarantee future success without the ability to learn. It's okay to try, it's okay to fail, but the important thing there is to learn. Don't be one of these people that continually fails and fails and fails without learning why they failed. So be prepared to challenge the process as a leader and take that role. The fourth of the 5 exemplary practices is the ability to enable others to act. And this is the role of the leader to foster collaboration by building trust, which ultimately strengthens others as you give away power and you give away discretion. A leader who can make a team of people feel strong and capable will get more from their team. And we know that the research tells us that leaders enable others to act not by hoarding the power that they have, but by giving it away. Now, throughout the life of a project, when you come together initially, you may keep a lot of that power. But as the project goes on, and particularly long-term projects, you should contribute to somebody else's professional development as a leader and begin to give away that power. Trust people. Build them up as leaders as well. Enable others to act. Don't micromanage, don't bully, don't undermine people. If you've got good people, trust them. It's a different story if you haven't got good people. You might just have to get rid of those people to get the best on board. And the final one of the 5 exemplary practices from Kurzes and Posner, encourage the heart. Now, this can be difficult for a lot of project managers. My experience with project managers is they tend to be overly rational types. That's very generally speaking, and I've met some great project managers who aren't. But more often than not, project managers I meet tend to be very rational types. And encouraging the heart may seem to be the least attractive of these 5 exemplary practices, or even to those people the least important. But it's not, because you are dealing with people here. Remember, the leader and the follower, that's a relationship between 2 people. So the leader has to take responsibility for recognizing the contributions by showing appreciation. Stand up at a staff meeting and recognize good work. Give out awards, write letters or emails to people thanking them for their contribution. Now, as you think about that, think about how you would feel if your current leader sent you a little email later on today saying, hey, just a quick email, I really appreciated the way you handled that client, or I appreciated the work you did last week, thank you so much. You'd feel pretty good if your leader recognized your contribution. So do the same for those that you lead. Celebrate the values and victories in your team by creating a spirit of community. Tell stories about how your team came into being and the challenges it's faced and where it's going and the success it's going to have. And also, the leader is the one who's going to have to encourage the heart when times are tough. Now, when times are tough, and perhaps when the project's under a lot of pressure, everybody begins to feel the heat. It's really important at this time that the leader stands above all of that and helps people to persevere through the tough times. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be an isolated rock and you have to put away all your emotions, but it may mean that you need another outlet outside of the workplace, perhaps some friends or colleagues that you can talk to about the challenges you're facing. But for the purposes of the team, you should be the solid rock. And remember, any of this, encouraging the heart and empathy, demands that you are authentic and genuine. You can't fake this stuff. People will know if you aren't a genuine person. So make sure that you're going to be authentic and genuine at all times. So those are the 5 practices of exemplary leaders. It's based on research. I could recommend the books. There is a workbook for each of those 5 practices. There's many books from Kurses and Posner, so please do follow them up. I have no financial interest in them. I've never met them, probably never will. But I do encourage you, if you are looking for leadership development that's worthwhile and based on research, to look up those books on Amazon or your favorite book retailer. So now we come to the end of the webinar, and I just want to wrap it up. So how can you apply everything that we've gone over in the last 47 minutes? First, make a decision to develop your own leadership skills. They can be learned. You have some natural leadership skills which suit a particular area. Develop those first. And then as you want to put yourselves into different contexts, develop other leadership skills. Some of them will come easily, some of them won't. But like any skill, they have to be learned, then practiced. The more you practice them, the better you'll get at them. Have a think about the things that we've gone over today in this webinar. How can you apply them in your workplace, in your personal life? And as I've mentioned already, I do encourage you to follow the Kurses and Posner model and start a journal noting down where and when you have or wished you had developed and displayed any of the 5 characteristics. And if you're feeling brave and you are in a leadership position at the moment, either in your workplace or in your personal life, take the opportunity to get feedback from followers. Ask them, am I a good leader? Am I the type of leader that you want? What can I do better? Some of those answers can be hard, but they can lead to the greatest growth if we listen to them openly as well. Copy the leaders you admire. Go and read autobiographies. Go watch them speak. Watch them on YouTube or TV or wherever you can. They may be in your sports team. They may be at your workplace. They could be anywhere. Copy them. Get a leadership mentor, somebody with experience that you want, and get them to help you get there as well. And remember that leadership opportunities are everywhere, not just in your professional life, but they're everywhere. When they're presented to you, take them. Whatever happens, you'll learn something from them. So in summary, and recapping what I've covered in this webinar, professional project management adds value to organizations. So that's appropriately applied professional project management practices add bottom line value to organizations. We know that. That's research based. We know that good leadership adds value to professional project management, and great leadership adds a lot more value. So we can see the link there between leadership, project success and organizational success. We saw that great project leaders consistently demonstrate great communication, they have a vision, they trust people, and they're empathic towards people. I've stressed that you need to protect your personal foundation and find out what your values are and live with integrity to be an authentic leader. And keep in mind that projects and their environments are more focused and constrained than operational environments, and this will affect the particular basket or selection of leadership skills used. So be aware of that and learn those ones. And actively and proactively seek to develop within yourself the traits of a great leader. Just as you would study medicine to become a great doctor, you can study leadership to become a great leader. So I do encourage you to make that commitment. My final thoughts on the matter are that the project management profession must take responsibility for developing our own leaders. It needs to be made a core component of ongoing professional development. We manage complex projects with unusual constraints. It's no good to just be great at the technical side of things, the cost and the time and the risk and the quality checks, all of those things. We've got to be great at the soft skills, the communication. We've got to be great leaders and everything that comes with that. That's how we become great project managers, and that's how the profession develops as well. I'd be interested in your thoughts on how leadership fits into projects and the profession of project management. Please feel free to email me. If you are interested, here's a small list of some of the books that you saw in that earlier slide. Obviously, you've got the Kurzes and Posner books and the whole series of workbooks. I've got one listed there, the Encouraging the Heart workbook. They've got many great books out that are practical and easy to complete. Some of my own favorites are Bill George, his book True North, really good book on finding your own true north. Daniel Goleman puts out some great works, particularly on emotional intelligence. So if you have trouble relating to empathy and that enabling others to act or encouraging the heart of those exemplary practices, perhaps you should start here with the concept of emotional intelligence. And the book that I did refer to, the very small book, is called A Very Short, Fairly Interesting and Reasonably Cheap Book About Studying Leadership by Brad Jackson and Ken Parry. I do recommend it. In a very small book, it concisely goes over most of, if not all, of the theories of leadership and the best way to study leadership and also to teach leadership as well. So I do recommend that book. If you have any other questions about reading recommendations, feel free to get in touch with me. More than happy to share some of my experiences there. So thank you very much. I appreciate you giving up your time today to go through this webinar. I hope I've been able to pass on some important messages about leadership and project management. If you do have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to contact me. I'm always happy to chat about the profession of project management or any aspect of it. Also email me if you want a copy of this presentation. I'm happy to send you a PDF of that. These are my contact details down the bottom. You can contact me at sean@crystal.consulting, and the web page is crystal.consulting. I'll leave you with a single bit of advertising and marketing about Crystal Consulting and what we do. But if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to sing out. Thank you very much.